Hey everybody, I'm here with Shelley Regner. She is an actress, she's a singer, she's best known for her acting career and singing in the Pitch Perfect movies, all three of them.
Yes.
And you played Ashley, is that
Played
correct?
Ashley. Yeah, that is correct. Ashley, some call her the forgotten Bella or the girl who's literally been here the whole time.
Yeah, amazing. I love how they did that.
Yeah.
Shelley was so gracious to donate some of her time here to help us learn more just about OCD. And this is something that Shelley experiences in her life. And so I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go through some questions and help people just know, like, this is what OCD looks like.
Yeah,
And
I would love
every
to.
person, can relate to probably what you're going to be talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's so important to talk about this openly for people that either deal with it or have a loved one that struggles with this or just want to know more about what it is. Just it's so important to help us understand ourselves better, help us understand other people and kind of what people are going through internally, because it's very easy to kind of behind the exterior of this when all this internal turmoil can be going on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that, as we know, people take a long time to get diagnosed with OCD because people aren't talking about it very often.
Yeah.
Or what we do see in the media is, washing hands and organizing, and people are like, oh, I don't have OCD because I don't do that. And
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting. I've just recently, in the last few months, really been diving into learning more about OCD because I've dealt with anxiety and depression. And what I didn't realize at a young point in my life was OCD. I was diagnosed technically very young by a psychiatrist around like 8, 10 years old. That was the age where my first like panic attack symptoms came about. And I was having these scary thoughts, and, they kind of lean toward thoughts of like the devil or thoughts about harming myself or thoughts about just these scary things as a kid where you're like, I would never do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to think about these things. And you try to shove them away and push them away, and not realizing that that's creating this cycle and creating this anxiety filled feeling within my body to where it would just come out in these horrific panic attacks, and at that age, I thought I was going to die. And so I didn't know what was going on. And so, my mom, we got to a psychiatrist, got some help. And got on medication. So I was having these horrific panic attacks. I didn't know what they were at the time. I thought that I was dying. I got diagnosed very early. I was put on SSRI medication, and over time and with therapy, I was able to kind of get back to a normal pace of life and understand, but I more understood the anxiety of everything than I did the OCD cycle. And so it wasn't until recently, about last year, I had thought I'd done, 25 years of work, and I was feeling really good about myself, and maybe it was time to kind of lean off of my medication and see how that might be a new phase for myself. And I was able to taper down to about a half dosage. I was on 200 milligrams for majority of my life. And people that know medication will know what that means. It's a high dose, and it worked for me. And then there was a point where I just thought, I think I'm having more, not adverse effects, but just kind of like hazy. I was feeling kind of numb with it. And I thought maybe I'll just lean off. So I got to a half dosage. It went really, really well. And I felt really confident because I thought, oh my goodness, all this work that I've done in therapy and, the intellectually and really understanding myself, I feel really confident. I think I can go all the way. And I did. And when I got off, basically I had an intrusive thought. I created a meaning behind it. It filled my body with anxiety that I was just kept perpetuating this cycle. And I was back into having really deep panic attack that just felt so uncontrollable. Disassociation, tremors in my body, and just scared to death. I'm over 30. You're like, that doesn't feel, I've created a whole life for myself that's been independent and, on my own, and confidence and great career. What's happening? I went back to my doctor. I got back on some medication to kind of level myself out again. And that's when I really started looking things up and finding things online of what is really going on. And I happened upon OCD and understanding, oh, that's what happened when I was 8 years old, I don't think it ever really left me. And so it's an interesting question of, I don't know if OCD really leaves you, with a lot of knowledge that we know. We know that there's not really any certain cause for it. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of science behind it, but for everyone, it's a bit different. And so I'm now been in this new phase of learning, rather than trying to fully medicate or make these emotions go away per se, because that was always my end goal, make it go away. And through your videos and through other wonderful advocates and OCD champions online, understanding, going through these mindfulness tactics of sitting with these uncomfortable emotions, this uncertainty, which in theory sounds so easy. You're like, oh my God, like what's there to be scared about? Oh, it's just a little anxiety. But it is fascinating what your brain can really create in itself, and to train yourself that you are strong enough to get through this cycle and that you will come on the other side has been very empowering. But it's also a practice that, because you kind of get through one and you go, great, I did it. It'll never return. And then you get shocked again. So it's an interesting learning curve for me at this point, but I'm just so grateful for everyone that does come on and kind of share these experiences, which is why I'm here, because if I can help someone in a similar experience, I'm so happy to do so.
I appreciate you going into depth about, OCD and you being diagnosed when you were younger. I'm so glad that happened. Sometimes it takes so long for people to get this diagnosis. I mean, how many people do you hear say, like, I had intrusive thoughts that I wanted and it was great. Like, kept having these thoughts about going to Disneyland. Like, that was amazing.
Yes.
It's usually things we don't want.
Usually things we don't want. And I think when it happens at a young age, you do internalize this trauma response in your body, or at least from my own experience of what I'm understanding. It was a traumatic experience as a child that I didn't understand. And as I tend to say, we weren't talking as openly about mental health at the time. So, it's not really anyone's fault here or there. It's just everyone knows what they know of the time. And so within my own household, it was just kind of like, well, maybe we can just not think about that. Everyone trying to be helpful in their own way, because no one wants to see anyone they love suffer. And so you just give good advice that you think is helpful at the time. And then you kind of, in the cycle, you sort of shame yourself, where you go, okay, I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm thinking about it more. And so what's wrong with me? And what am I doing wrong? Or why is my faith not strong enough? Why am I feeling this way? And it just adds on all these emotions of shame and guilt, and, just compounds on itself, where then you're just stuck in this hole, and until you're just like, somebody save me, come on.
OCD, for sure, for anybody, is going to make them question themselves, and it's going to put meaning on these thoughts. So even a child, you're like, man, this must mean something if I'm having all of these kind of thoughts, and it's scary. And that's where a lot of the sometimes trauma responses come from, is like, this must mean something, and I can't understand it as a child, but it means something. And such a scary thing. And as you've gotten older and you've gone through your career and you're living life, a lot of times we think, oh, it's there, and I took care of it and it's gone, like you mentioned. But OCD kind of stays, but sometimes it's really big, sometimes it's really small. I'm curious for you, just throughout your career, has OCD shown up while you are filming or while you were just doing your thing?
Absolutely. I actually had a recent experience where I was on stage and I was doing a live performance and I was singing, and I had an intrusive thought come in the middle of a song and wanted to do mental compulsion with it. And I just thought, I was like, it's why you rehearse. And I just kept going through it. And I was like, I can't do this right now. Like, why are you here? It was so interesting. It felt like so many things happened in one moment. I was nervous. I got shocked. I was mad, but I still had to go on with the show. And it is where, I'm very grateful that my professionalism, and I have the ability to power through and keep going and know that it's just a thought. There are times where the thought seemed too big And then there, like you're saying, it can get very big. It can be very small where you go, oh, I recognize that that's a thought. I can let that go on by. And it is interesting. There's learning this process of choosing thoughts that we engage with. And what I found most interesting and kind of most helpful in my journey at the moment is the idea that OCD latches on to things that we value most. And I think that's why a big fear comes up, because we get these what ifs, or we get these, worst case scenarios, or just these terrifying thoughts that obviously we have a reaction because they're attacking something meaningful in our lives. For me, I get nervous to speak about this, but I think it's important. And I apologize if I get emotional. For me, it showed up in scrupulosity, which is like a religious OCD. I've grown up in church, my whole life, and I only cry because I get vulnerable to share this very deep part of myself. We obviously live in a culture that can create a lot of divide based on different beliefs and systems that we've grown up in. And I'm not here to pose any kind of opinion on a belief system, but I did grow up in the Christian faith, and it is something I practice, and that is where my OCD likes to attack most. And it comes out in these uncertain thoughts of if I am believing right or doing it right, or, when I was a kid, a lot of hell thoughts coming in, because these are things you learn, and it's very dramatic. It can be traumatizing when a young developing brain doesn't quite understand the information. In my adult life now, almost having to understand that little girl from the past and what she went through to be able to carry her in this form today and acknowledge what she went through, acknowledge that she is okay. But it's just interesting that the OCD can still latch onto something that you thought you had gotten over or had success through in the years. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of my my journey here.
I so appreciate you talking about what you've gone through. And I love something you said was OCD attack our values and attaches to that. And so it's like, no wonder, like growing up in Christian beliefs, and it could be a value for somebody, and all of a sudden the brain's like, well, you know what? I can make you doubt a lot of things. Or, this one scripture that somebody read, like, woo, you better not say that, or don't do that, or don't think that. And it's, and OCD loves to grab onto that and like, oh, you're not supposed to? Oh, let me just throw out a bunch of those intrusive thoughts your way. And then your brain's like, but I'm not supposed to do this, and I can't stop it. And it's scary.
Very scary. I think just like you're saying, you learn these ideas of you're not supposed to doubt, you're not supposed to be anxious for anything, you're not supposed to doing all that. And I think when, especially as kids, I'll speak for myself, I was a very good girl. All I wanted to be was a good girl. And, none of us intend or want to misbehave. And I took these things very seriously. I took these tasks and these, ideologies very seriously. And so when a doubt crept up, my earnest heart was like, I'm not supposed to do that. Something must be wrong. And so it is interesting that almost as an adult, having this kind of moment happening again is very interesting, because it is more of the feeling at this point, because intellectually I can process the logic. So that kind of is a brain warp in itself, where I can sit here and understand what truth is, and affirmations, and even looking at past proof of like, I've done this and done this well for so many years. How come I'm feeling different? And so that disconnect can be very, very frightening. And if you don't know what that is or what's going on, and understanding to separate the thought and the feeling, it can be nightmarish.
Yeah, that in itself has got to be frightening. Is like, I know logically this thing sometimes is silly or ridiculous, or I know it's not really me, it's not my thought, but I can't stop thinking about it. Or I keep doing behaviors to get it to go away. As you said at the very beginning, like that's usually the goal for most people, is how can I get these thoughts to stop and the anxiety to stop? And that actually makes it worse the more we try to get it to stop. Instead, our goal is to retrain the brain to see something and not really react to it. And really just say, I know you're putting a lot of value on this, but I'm going to teach you that it doesn't have as much value as you think it does.
Yeah.
Which is why it wants to jump around, and can come in someone's life and then go away and say, hey, a new value, you got a new job. Let me see if I can screw that up. Oh, you're in a new relationship. Oh, you had a kid. Oh, and it just jumps to the new thing. It's like, you know what? We haven't revisited, religion in a while. Let's pop back to this
how
one.
are you feeling about that today?
Yeah.
It is. And it almost becomes, it is interesting to try and make it almost this dialogue and really training your brain to borderline laugh at it. It wants to introduce itself as this big monster, and it feels like a big monster. What's helped me too is that idea of looking at it like a bully. The OCD is a bully, and what do you do with bullies? You take their power away by not reacting to it, and not giving it more power than it's trying to exude. And I think especially in a theme like scrupulosity, where you try to discern your own voice versus the OCD voice of, how do I know? Because you're just questioning everything when you're stuck down in this moment, and you kind of don't know which way is up, and you don't know, you just want to feel better. And I loved something I learned where OCD is loud. OCD likes to scream at you. OCD is urgent and makes you feel like you have to do something right now. And your inner wisdom or God or whatever you want to call it within yourself is calm, is patient, is the loving voice, is the compassionate voice within yourself. That's why sometimes you feel like you're like, where are you? Or what, why can't I find that strength, or what's going on? It feels like it just left. And it's like, oh no, it's still in here. It's just waiting for you to kind of like let the tantrum subside. And so I always kind of thinking of it as a tantrum. I used to throw great tantrums as a kid. And so I kind of giving it a comical version of like, well, if I could throw a great tantrum, I bet my brain can throw an even better one. So, you know what, though? Tantrums have to end. The energy runs out. So, yeah, that's kind of how I've been able to sort of power through and wade through when things feel like they're never going to end.
Yeah, that's a great thought to have. Is OCD is very loud, and intuition, and something we need to pay attention to, is usually pretty quiet. It's not demanding. It's not an urge to do something right now. It's so important. I got to do it right now. And so that can be very confusing. Like, is this actually me, or is it something I need to pay attention to? And that's one of those indications I always look for, is like, how loud is this right now? And what is your urge to want to fix it?
Yes.
If it's intuition, it's kind of like I'm not sure. I don't know if I need to do something about it.
Yeah. And there's something I love I actually learned from you, which is it's beautiful, and but it's tricky. Funny enough, is the effort to try and figure it out, right? Where it's just like, if I just figure this out, then it'll be better, then it'll go away, then it'll XYZ. And the amount of times I've been like, I figured it out because I felt better. I was like, so I figured it out, so this is what I have to do. And then something else pops up in a different sort of thought form or a different sort of theme. And then I go, wait, I thought I figured it out. And so to kind of have another person say like, are you trying to figure it out? Yeah, that's not it. We're just like, oh, dang, that sucked. But that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to fix it, make it go away. So it's just fascinating. It is exhausting work. But that's the thing, like hard work always pays off. And you are worthy of the hard work. You can do the hard work. And if you just keep doing it, it's going to get easier over time. It's got to, like that's that hope that we cling on to.
That's the important part about OCD, is that treatment actually does work. And sometimes it's just knowing how to do it, correctly and sticking to it, and having a good mindset of like, what does recovery actually look like? As you've gone through your own journey, what kind of treatments have you tried or are doing to kind of help yourself?
I love therapy. I've been in therapy pretty much my entire life. It's something I enjoy. I'm very fortunate to be able to afford it and pay for it. And I know that's something that for a lot of people can be a hurdle. So other practices that I really have implemented, like I've said, I do take medication. I have been on medication majority of my life. It does help me, but that is a very individual and specific journey. Some people don't respond well to different medications. Some people don't want to be on them. Some people love them and like will take them for the rest of their life. You know, I'm finding my own balance within that because like I said, I was on a high dose and that wasn't working particularly like 100% for me because the interesting thought was I was on the highest dose and I was still experiencing panic attacks. So that kind of raised the question of, well, if this thing that I thought was supposed to make these symptoms or this experience go away hasn't, then what other options are there, or is there a different route that we can take? So currently, you know, mindfulness practices have been extremely helpful for me. Breath work, however long, you can do it for 10 minutes, you can do it for 30 minutes, you can do it for an hour, you know, depending on what kind of time you have, but really just breath work, visualizations of finding where in your body that feeling is, observing it, not judging it. That's the biggest one. It's so difficult to do. I think that feeling is there. Let me not be mad about it. Let me not try to push it away. It's just going to be along for the ride for the moment. Those kinds of things have really, really helped me. And I feel like most importantly is being able to have a safe environment, a safe person, a safe system, because there is no reason to go about this journey alone. And that's why I do my advocacy, because I never want anyone to feel like they're alone. I never want anyone to feel like they can't ask for help or seek out help, because there are people that want to help you. And it does take that action step on your part to seek out either the professional or the emotional help that you need to find what's going to work for you. So those are the different practices and treatments that have really helped me so far. And I'm still even learning in this journey and knowing, I think kind of giving myself the compassion and relieving this pressure of needing to fix it, like we say, needing to have a specific outcome, because of course we want it to go away. Of course we want it to get better soon and fast and immediately. But being able to say, I'm going to be okay even if this sticks around. I'm going to be okay even if this is hard. I'm going to be okay even if I never figure this out. You know, the radical acceptance of it. It's difficult for me. In times it's difficult for all of us that kind of deal with this. And that makes me emotional, because wouldn't we all love a magic wand to just heal each other and go, boom, you're done. I never want you to suffer with this, but this is what some of us have. I don't know what else to say on that, but
Yeah. No, we often sometimes forget about these other aspects of treatment, such as mindfulness and radical acceptance. We tote around as therapists, exposure and response prevention, like you face your fears. But what we often find is that when somebody is ruminating and they are having such a hard time, they're not present in the moment. And that's what all of this allows you to do, is to accept things as they are. Accepting doesn't mean that I agree, but accepting means that I am willing to just be here with this, and it can come and it can go, and I don't have to put value on this thing.
Yeah.
And
oh, wow. That's beautiful. Yeah. I don't have to put value on this. Oh, I love that. Thank you for saying that.
Thanks. And ultimately, what it comes down to is just living life. Like, I'm just going to go do the thing that I want to do. And if I feel triggered, that's great. And if I feel depressed, cool. Whatever it is, like, I got to go do it, because what else do we have? I mean, our job is to live life and keep moving forward.
Yes.
And so when we stop doing that, it's harder to do treatment, because we're having to add that to the treatment plan. And so for you, I think you've brought a lot of strength to a lot of people listening. Like, what advice would you want to give anyone struggling with OCD or even anxiety? Like, what would you say, whether they're first starting their journey or maybe they've been through it for a while?
Kind of things we've talked about, and simple reminders of, you're not alone. This may feel big, but a mantra an affirmation I like to give myself is, I am bigger than my feelings. And really just never give up. You can't give up. There is always the other side of this. I don't know if I should say unfortunately, but the circumstances being what they are, the only way out is through. It's just kind of what it is, which sucks. And I think there's a beautiful lesson in what makes us feel so weak sometimes is actually our biggest strength underneath it all, which I am very aware when you're going through it. It sounds like the dumbest worst thing anyone could say to you. But then you kind of have a moment of relief and you go, I must be really strong to be able to withstand this kind of internal struggle. I think lastly, just try not to compare yourself and your journey to someone else's. Some people just have an easier time with their thoughts and go, that just doesn't matter to me, and I'm able to just easily go on. It's easy to be envious of those people and go, I wish, but that just means they're dealing with something else that feels hard to them. And we all have whatever difficulty in our journey. I think, like I've said earlier, this is a really difficult thing for a lot of people. So wrapping it up, you're not alone. Never give up. The only way out is through. Just keep going and ask for help wherever you need it. Please be vocal if you need help, because there's no point in just struggling by yourself. People want to help and people are willing to help, but you got to ask.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a perfect way to end this, because it is, the more we talk about this, even if it's scary, emotional, all of that, it's taking all these things that OCD wants to push down into the shadows and it's bringing it out, which is like what it doesn't want you to do is to defame it, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're doing, is like, you don't matter anymore, and let me talk about how you don't.
Yeah.
And so I love that advice you gave.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love the work you do, and I hope anyone watching feels empowered and feels like they absolutely can keep going and that there is ample treatment. And it's just, unfortunately, it's one of those things where you got to figure out what works for you. You know, what works for someone else may not be exactly what works for you, and what works for someone might be exactly what works for you. And that's why we're here, to be able to support you and find the right fit that is going to help in people's recovery journey, and to be able to just live that life that of fullness and love and abundance that we all want to live.
Amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming here and sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with people. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.